Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Dallas Social Toastmasters. It is January 14th of 2021. This is our second meeting of the year. I'm going to be your Zoom coordinator. My name is Mark Schroeder. You will find me, if you need to, in the chat. There's a chat button on the bottom for most of you. If you're on a tablet, it may be a little bit different, but there's a chat button at the bottom to bring up the chat window next to the share screen button. And there will be a pull down. You can either chat to everybody or to individuals. You will be chatting to individuals to do our voting tonight. You'll be chatting to our vote counter. Let's see, what else do I need to talk about? For the most part, I'm going to keep everybody on mute if we have noise. As long as you don't have a noisy environment, I have no problem with you leaving it open. But we will do what we have to do to keep the noise down if we have a noisy environment. I do want to share the meeting agenda. And Rob, you mentioned that we're about to mention something else. Was that it?
To pin the timer to the screen when you need to.
Yeah, I'll describe that again in a moment then. This is our website, DallasSocialToastmasters.com. If you were to go there and look in the members section, the third column, you'll find the current agenda. Click on the current agenda and it will bring up this copy of the agenda for you to follow along. This describes all of the meeting roles and who's going to be performing them this evening. I'm going to leave that up there just briefly and go ahead and do the description. Our timer, as you can see tonight, is Dagan Newland. In order to watch the timer while things are going on, you have a couple of options. You can either put everything into gallery mode, since we are all currently fitting on the screen. That will guarantee that Dagan is visible. The other thing is you can go into Dagan's little box and find the ... which is kind of a more, and in there you can pin his video. That's another way to make sure, because Dagan will be doing the timing and indicating how you're doing on your time if you are one of our speakers. So make sure that you do that. I'll try to remind you at least before some of the major sections of our meeting. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share at this point. I think that's all I need to really talk about. I talked about the voting. Unfortunately, your votes will not be anonymous. We don't have an easy way of doing anonymous voting, but at least it'll only be between you and the vote counter. Vote counter tonight, also again from that agenda, is Dagan. So he's going to be doing both of those roles for us tonight. With that, I would like to go ahead and introduce our invocation and pledge for tonight, and that's going to be Rob Giles.
Thank you very much, Mark. We greatly appreciate it. If anybody has any questions during the meeting, any issues, Mark would be the guy to go to, and I'm here to help as well. Just reach out to him in a private chat. But for tonight, I want to not necessarily bring an invocation as far as an inspirational quote or anything like that, but I do want you to, if you could, for me, in the private chat to me, go ahead and tell me, if you recall, what last week's theme was and what last week's word of the day was. Send that to me in a private chat, and I'll take a look at them and sort of review them a little bit later. Right now, I do want to go over, I guess, one thing that is related to our theme, and our theme is memory. So I would like to actually share with you something right now on the screen. First, I want to get that started. Let's see, is it getting started for me? It is. Okay. So as you type in your answers to my questions for what happened last week, I want to go ahead and share with you my screen to kind of reflect on something, and it has to do with our theme to some extent. There we go. All right. So can everybody see that?
Yes.
Does anybody know what that is? Can anybody name what that is? If you want to speak up, unmute, that's fine.
It's a
And if I
Commodore
don't,
64 keyboard.
that's exactly what it is. Actually, I mean, it's the entire Commodore 64.
Yeah.
It didn't come with the monitor, so it basically was all self-encased. And this was created back in 1982. And the reason it was called Commodore 64 was because it had 64K of RAM. And relative to today, that's not much. Back then, that was quite a bit, and it created a lot of fun for a lot of people, and possibly some actual beyond creativity, maybe some productivity as well. But mostly, I think it was for fun. But if you think about today, memory has changed quite a bit. And for one thing, if we can get this here. It actually has become quite small. And you can see that right there. It's a fingertip. And on it is a micro SD card or micro SD disk, whatever you want to call it. And this particular one that's on this photo is for 1 terabyte of memory. And that's quite a bit considering the last thing that I showed you was the actual Commodore 64, which had 64 kilobytes of memory. Now, this is what that terabyte memory card looks like right here, more specifically. And you can actually get a 2 terabyte memory card. Now, I would warn you at this point, if you ever do, that this actually might be something that is not 100% stable. Memory cards have come quite a ways in the past 5-10 years. However, some of the newer ones they're still working on trying to get them to be very sound and secure, and ways that you're not going to lose. It's not going to be corrupted and things like that. And that's improved over the years. But if you want to take a look at that, that's pretty incredible. When it comes down to it, it's something that really is incredible when you think about it. I want to tell you this, that the Commodore 64 with the 64K, if you were to take the memory of the 2 terabyte micro card, it would take over 33.5 million Commodore 64s to hold that memory. Imagine that. Pretty incredible, isn't it? 1982 there. Now, I know that's a long time from way back when, but it's still pretty incredible that you saw that big bulky thing and then you saw what could fit on your finger. And this is really only the beginning. I see 10 terabyte micro cards coming soon and things like that. So you can imagine where we're headed. So it's pretty incredible, the memory, but that's not really the memory that I want to talk about. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, the memory that I'm really referring to today in our theme, and that's what's up here and what comes out of there. But I want to move to our duty holders for the evening. And we're going to start with our duty descriptions. And our first duty holder, as Mark Schroeder had mentioned, kind of is holding 2 duties, not kind of, he is, and that is Dagan Newland. Dagan, can you tell us about your duties of timer and vote counter?
Sure. So as timer, I'll be timing the different sections of the meeting. That's going to be our prepared speeches, our table topics, and our evaluations. So during those sections, I will start off with a gray screen here. And when you meet your minimum time, which for speakers, both speakers I see are 5 to 7 minutes. So at 5 minutes, you'll get the green. Then at 6 minutes, you'll get the yellow. And at 7 minutes, you'll get the red. And you'll have 30 seconds to wrap up. And of course, you do have a leeway of 30 seconds before you get the green as well for speakers. And for table topics, it's 1 to 2 minutes. So you get green at 1, 1.5, you get yellow, and 2 minutes, you get red. And again, you have 30 seconds to wrap up, but you do not get that 30 second leeway before the green. So you must hit 1 minute for the table topics. And for evaluators, it's 2 to 3 minutes. So you'll get 2 minutes of green, 2.5 yellow, and 3 at red. And for evaluators, you get 30 seconds leeway on either end to qualify. And for the vote counter, after those different sections of prepared speeches, table topics, and evaluators, and also the best of the big three, you'll be asked to vote for the best person that did the, whatever section it was in, and you'll send those votes directly to me via private chat. And I will tally those and give my report of the winners at the end of the meeting. Also, if speakers do get a formal evaluation, but if you do have comments for the speaker, you can always send those to the speaker themselves and give them your thoughts of what of their speech. And those are my duties. Back to you, Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Dagan. We greatly appreciate it. Our next duty holder is Mark Sims. On the agenda, it shows as myself, Rob Giles, but it's actually Mark Sims holding the duty. Thankfully, I am thankful for that, holding that duty tonight. So Mark, can you tell us about your duty as posture monitor tonight?
Posture monitor. I'll be watching for the speakers and any type of nonverbal behavior that can maybe distract the audience. It could be touching your head, touching your face. If we were in person and you could see the full body, it might be hands in pockets. So it is a little more cumbersome to discern unhelpful body language or gestures online on Zoom, but I'll do the best I can, take notes. And then Rob is very helpful touching his face like that. He's overdoing it now. At least it's a great example of something that can distract the audience. And I will make a note when called upon by the general evaluator, Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Mark. We greatly appreciate that duty description for posture monitor. Our next duty holder is also doing a double duty or holding a double duty. And I ask if he could please describe both of these duties. It is John Vessels. John, you are the counter and the grammarian. Can you let us know what you'll be doing tonight?
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. I will be the counter. And the counter, I'm going to be listening to everybody speaking tonight, and I'm going to listen for the use of crutch words like ums, so's, you knows, things like that you might express during your speaking. We try to get away from crutch words, so with me counting on them helps you to stop using them. That's the goal. My other job tonight is as the grammarian. The grammarian's job is to first introduce the word of the day. And tonight, the word of the day is buzzworthy. I'll turn off my background later and you'll be able to see it without. And I'll hold it up during the table topics when you'll need to use it. Yeah, I used it, caught me off guard. The other part of the grammarian's job is to listen to everybody speaking tonight and listen for good uses or bad uses of the English language and bring them out. And so at the end of the meeting, I will give a report to the general evaluator and to you to let you know what I've heard. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
I'm sorry, what is the definition of the word of the day? I heard the word of the day, but not the definition.
Buzzworthy. Buzzworthy means modern or current interest that one might bring a lot of attention to it. It's an adjective.
Thank you very much, John. We greatly appreciate those descriptions. Before we move into our prepared speeches, I would like to go ahead and talk a little bit more about actual, let me see here, actual memory. And part of this became a little personal for me because my mother over the past 5 years has grown to have dementia. And during that time, she has suffered, and it's taken a few waves. It's gotten worse and then it got better. And right now it's pretty status quo, which is a good thing. one thing I would say, if you know of anybody, whether it's a spouse or a parent who does have dementia, if they're on any kind of severe painkillers, you may want to hold any severe judgment toward some of their actions or what they do, because how it interacts and coincides with some of that memory, some of those memory problems can really lead to some awful things, and perhaps some things that they're saying and doing that you may judge in another way if it was a sane human being who had all of their faculties. So keep that in mind. We already talked about things that we remember. I asked you to send me a message in chat, in private chat, about last week's theme and word of the day. I want to go over a few things right now, and that could be hurting your memory, and it's foods. So I want to go over a few foods that are not great for memory. So things that I think most of us probably like, at least to some extent, but we need to consider maybe removing some of these, or at least reducing what we intake into our mouth, into our body, and eventually that affect our brain. And the first thing is diet soda and other drinks that have artificial sweeteners. Now, for me, I'm not a diet soda drinker, but I do have some drinks that have artificial sweeteners in them. So it's something that we can kind of think about. If you partake in either of those, then maybe reduce the amount or eliminate them entirely. We just started a new year. What a better way. Another bad food, I would say, is French fries and in general fried foods. Now, I think we all knew that fried foods were not great for us, that they affected our heart and our entire pulmonary and even cardiovascular system, but we probably didn't think about how it affected our brain. So think about those things. And specifically, when I was looking through the list, it spoke about one particular food and put it on by itself in the list, which was donuts. So I myself love donuts. So it's tough for me to remove those entirely. Now, I don't eat donuts a lot, but if somebody offers me, I'm probably going to accept. But keep that in mind. That's one of the tougher ones, or at least one of the bigger ones as far as the fried foods are concerned. Another couple of foods are white bread and white rice. We have alternates that we can use, and maybe none of us here actually still use white bread and white rice, but it's something that is cheap and expensive, and things that, perhaps we use if we have families, because it helps with our budgets and things like that. But it's something that you might want to consider moderation of. Another thing, and I don't want to get rid of this in my world, and it's red meat. So although, again, a lot of people associate that with your heart and your arteries and veins and all of that, but it can affect up here as well. So keep red meat in mind, maybe take that in moderation as well. Something that probably falls along all of those lines with fried foods and red meat is butter and full fat cheeses. So keep those in mind as well. And something that you probably wouldn't think would be bad for you, but swordfish and also ahi tuna. A couple of things that, if they're done well, they're pretty darn tasty. And you would think that they were great for you. And maybe they are in certain ways, but as far as your brain's concerned, you want to stay away from them, or at least keep it, again, within moderation. Finally, as far as bad foods for your brain, bottled dressings, marinades, and syrups. Now, syrups, yeah, you would think, yeah, that's probably bad. Marinades, you would think, well, what's with that? How can that be bad, right? Bottled dressings, yeah, maybe that's bad. But those are some things that you want to consider as well, if you want to maybe think about removing some items, or at least reducing how much you're intaking as far as that is concerned. At this point, I want to go ahead and move into our prepared speeches. Our first prepared speaker is going to be Marcia Collins, and her evaluator for the evening is Mr. Mark Sims. Mark Sims, can you tell us a little bit about Marcia's goals tonight?
Yes, and I want to disclose Wednesday morning I had 2 donuts. It got my attention, Rob. but not every day, certainly. Marcia's speech is titled, What Makes Birthdays So Happy? And by the way, the answer to that is lots and lots of presents. So, hey, Marcia, March 14th, just remember that. But her path is on coaching. Is that coaching or coaching feedback?
Coaching.
Okay, coaching. And the time is 5 to 7 minutes. So please help me welcome Marcia Collins. What makes birthdays so happy? What makes birthdays so happy, Marcia Collins?
Thank
And a
you.
quick reminder to make sure that Dagan is visible.
Yes. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. May I serenade you for a minute? Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday, Marcia. Happy birthday to me. What makes birthdays so happy? Birthdays are anniversaries. They're the anniversaries of celebrating the birth of a person. Birthdays are celebrated in numerous cultures, often with gifts, cards, parties, rites of passage ceremonies, flowers. I celebrated the anniversary of my birth just this past Tuesday. Yes, I am 48 years wiser, and yet I truly love birthdays. Perhaps it's due to when I was younger, my mom would get us all dressed. It was 4 of us, feed us, drop us off to school. And within 2 or 3 hours, I'm getting that summons slip to the office. And who do I see? My mom standing there. My mom would check me out. And what would we do the rest of the day? We would head out to Century City, which was an outdoor mall in Los Angeles. We would spend the day there shopping. We would have lunch at Clifton's cafeteria. And I don't know, I just felt so special. I really did. It was our time together. It really felt like a party because the following day is my mom's birthday. So I really felt just truly the world was mine, all mine. I'm special. So perhaps spending time with loved ones is what makes birthdays so happy. What else, you wonder? What make a birthday so happy? Freebies, discounts. I tell you, when you get that email, you're looking for them. And trust and believe, I created a folder for the ones that I received in my email, right? So for breakfast, I use my free entree at Norma's. I put my 6-piece free wing basket from Buffalo's to the side. I have until February to use those. Now, for dinner, you know who was happy? My husband was very happy because that was $20 off at the dinner, the restaurant that we had. So he for sure was very happy. What else would make a birthday very happy? You know what it would be? It's just the fact of knowing that God granted another day of life. Birthdays for me is a day of reflection. It's reflecting the fact that I'm still here. And for me personally, I lost my uncle on Christmas. It was very devastating. And it brought for me a reflection of what my purpose is and the fact that God granted me the opportunity to be here. 48 years. My time is not up. So, what makes a birthday so happy? Because we always say, happy birthday. It's happy birthday, the birth, the life of yourself, of that loved one. That's what makes birthdays so happy. Back to you, fellow Toastmaster. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcia. We are very appreciative of your speech this evening. At this point, I want to move to our second speaker for the evening, and that is Mr. Lee King. And I am Lee's evaluator for this evening, and therefore I will go ahead and tell you a little bit about Lee's speech. Lee is doing a project at the Path, which is called Reflect on Your Path. And the purpose of this project is for Lee to reflect on his or her growth during the completion of his path. The purpose of his speech this evening is to share some aspect of his growth during the completion of his Pathways path. So please help me to welcome Mr. Lee King with What I Learned, Lee King.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Always an honor to have the opportunity to speak with you all. And tonight I will be sharing with you what I have learned through Zoom so far, this time that we've been on Zoom. I started the new education program in Toastmasters about the time that we transitioned from face-to-face meeting to online meetings, which has been a very interesting and very good challenge for me. And I have found that while I was really intending on working on interpersonal communication skills throughout the meeting, that I would be doing it in person. And as it turns out, it ended up being that I worked on this path of strategic relationships all online. It's been a very interesting journey, as many of y'all have experienced. But I think the nice thing that I learned is just how to get comfortable on Zoom, how to deal with distractions that not normally used to having, and figuring out how to work within a reduced space. And that's something that I feel like I'm still working on. My installed camera is actually very high, so it's really hard for me to get my gestures down. But that's something that I will continue to work on as long as we are on Zoom. But the other thing that I learned about this path of strategic relationships is how to connect with other people and how to interact with different people's personalities, how to meet other people where they're at, and learn to adapt your ways of communicating to the needs of the person that you're communicating to. And that can be a real challenge, actually, for a lot of people, including myself, to really figure out what makes someone motivated, what makes people feel happy, sad, and take that initiative or that sense of feeling and to respond to other people in the most empathetic way that you can. Of course, with happiness and humor, it's pretty easy, but when people have bad news or disheartening news, it's a little bit harder. Now, another interesting thing that I found through working on this path of strategic relationship is how to do better with phone conferencing. Again, not too familiar with conference calls, although I have done them in the past. I've certainly never have had to depend on using conference calls for things like job interviews or other important related business. Used to going and doing a lot of business face to face, but we're not able to really do that right now. So it becomes more of a challenge of interacting with other people remotely and to continue to grow in that area. So while I set out with the goals of learning how to interact with other people, build relationships, and make more connections, what I've really found is that through this time, I have learned more on how to do all of those skills remotely, which has been a growing experience for me. And one that I was not expecting, and one that I think is definitely going to be more important as we move forward. Certainly, since we don't know when the pandemic will ever end, or well, it will end at some point, but I have a feeling that we're probably going to be on Zoom and meeting virtually for quite some more time. So as you all work through your paths here in Toastmasters, I would just encourage you to really think through what your goals are, what your personal goals are, and what you are learning along the way, even though you may be facing challenges. Don't fear the challenges, just embrace your challenges. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Lee. We appreciate your speech this evening. At this point, I would like to ask our timer, Dagan, did both of our prepared speakers qualify on time?
Unfortunately, no, they did not. Lee is the only one that qualified.
Okay, so we don't necessarily need to vote for Lee or for the prepared speaker because Lee was the only one who qualified on time. However, I do recommend that you send a comment to each of our speakers, perhaps about something that they did very well, or maybe something that they could have improved upon. And we always appreciate that feedback. At this point, while you're doing that, I want to talk a little bit more about memory. And I talked about a lot of the foods that we should avoid, which is kind of a downer, I know. At least for me, when I read through that list, it was a downer for me. But what are some things that we can do to actually help our brain? And one thing that comes to mind, at least, and this isn't any great scientific thing, maybe there's science that will back me up, but I haven't looked directly into it, but I can only imagine that these are things that can help. And one of them is to work out. And I'm not talking about flexing your muscles, although that doesn't hurt either because that helps with serotonin, and serotonin helps up here. But work out your brain, keep it active, challenge it, challenge yourself to things, learn something new. It's something as simple as taking on Toastmasters. It could be something like learning a new language, or learning how to cook, or learning to cook a specific meal. Some of these things are things that our brain just needs to work with and figure out. And that's exactly how our brain stays strong. It stays active. Another thing that you could do to actually aid your memory are common things. One of the things that we do and that we're actually doing during this meeting for some of us is taking notes. Taking notes can definitely help memory because you're not only absorbing what you're intaking, but you're actually repeating it by writing it out. So there's some good things that you can do in that regard. Other things that you can do is try to remember things by associating them with other things, whether it's something that you love, some sense of smell or touch or sight that you can remember and relate to something. And this is good for, heck, even for our evaluators this evening. As we go through, you try to remember things so that you don't necessarily have to look at notes. Some of these things are things that can help us to remember in a more specific and direct sense in the now. Some things that can help us in the long run, like I said, is learning, just keeping active and growing. And one of the things that I would recommend, and that a lot of us have kind of thrown out the window, is read books. I would say actually pick up a book and actually thumb through it and read it, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. Fiction, you're bringing in all that great information. Nonfiction, you are, or I'm sorry, reverse that. Fiction, you're actually using your creative mind to follow along storylines and to actually imagine what's going on. And your brain functions a lot that way, and it really gets things going. Nonfiction, you're bringing in great information, actual facts, and that's something that can help us as well. We're just learning new information that we can use later, or that we can actually ponder or consider as we go along. Now, reading off of a different platform, an e-reader or a Kindle or something like that, that's fine too. I think even reading news online and researching news online, that's fine too. But if you can, pull yourself away from the screen, pick up a book and go through it. Maybe take a little trip to your library. Those are some ways that you can actually help your brain increase its functionality, increase those synapses firing, and all those types of things. And again, yeah, there's nothing wrong with working out physically, because it does actually help your brain as well. Sometimes we don't think about those things. At this point, I'm going to pass the meeting over to our topic master. Please help me to welcome our topic master for the evening, Miss Karen Lee.
One of the things that I watched a video of a man who had been in a nursing home for 10 years. He was on the Music and Memory website, and those residents listened to music that they were interested in years past. And this particular resident would sit for hours and wouldn't say anything. When he was listening to the music, he would tap his feet and he would sing. And then he actually carried on a conversation with one of the people that was employed at the facility. So a lot of residents use the earphones and listen to music that are in the nursing home. And the music helps them to relate and enjoy and remember times past, the music that they used to listen to. The music can sometimes help the memory. Do you like music or play an instrument? Why, Paul?
It's actually Paul. But yeah, great question. I think it's something that I've thought about a lot as well. I actually grew up playing a couple of instruments. I played piano, cello, and I also played drums for a while. So kind of grew up in sort of a musical environment. And I definitely think that it has helped with memory, especially being a student for the last, however many years that I've kind of been in training. It's definitely helped with memory, but it's also kind of given me an opportunity to, at times when I'm more stressed, to help kind of, as you were saying, relax a little bit more. I think music has a way of giving us a sense of peace in a way that a lot of other things are not able to. And whenever I am having trouble with studying or just need a little bit of a break, music has definitely been something that both, playing on my own and also listening to music I enjoy has been a good way to kind of gather my thoughts. And I think it also helps to take my mind away from whatever it is that I'm trying to study. And in that way, kind of helps to consolidate that information as well, rather than always trying to, stress out about trying to get the information into my head. So I think, as you were saying, music is definitely a great way to help with memory and also can help to give us some relaxation as well. Back to you, Table Topics Master.
As Rob was saying, one of the ways that we can help our memory is to make certain lifestyle choices to eat for good health, to exercise, and get plenty of sleep to help our memory. What healthy lifestyle choices do you plan for healthy memory? Mark Schroeder.
Healthy lifestyle choices for a good memory. I don't know about specifically for a good memory, but for overall good health. I pretty much every year for the past 5 to 7 years have done a thing called the Balanced Life Challenge. And I'm bringing it up because it just started again this year. Started, well, let's see, it hasn't even been a full week. It started on Monday. And it's already been, it's at least lived up to the word challenge. The Balanced Life Challenge has got 4 parts to it: nutrition, exercise, relaxation, and sleep. The nutrition has got things that you get points for doing and things that you get negative points against doing. It's interesting that a lot of the negative ones are things that Rob would have come up with and mentioned. But let's go through a couple of the positives real quick. The positive things are to get 2 servings of protein, 5 servings of fruits and vegetables, and you have to drink 64 ounces of water, and do either tree nuts or olive oil. But you do get points off for diet sodas and sugar, and there was one other item. Trying to remember what that is. Diet soda, sugar, and processed grains. So the white rice and white bread, things of that nature. So those are the kind of things that I'm doing. Obviously the relaxation is do that daily, exercise daily, and sleep daily. Get points for that. And I would recommend it to anyone. The diet is basically a buzzworthy diet, which is the Mediterranean diet. That's kind of what it's based on. Seems to work. Everybody gets very, very good numbers on all of their blood work the moment they get out of the 6 weeks that we do this. And you do not have to be with my doctor in order to do the challenge. If you want to consider it next year, let me know. We'll get you signed up. Back to you.
I have been remiss in telling the Table Topics participants to use the word of the day buzzworthy during their Table Topics presentation to be considered for the contest. Many people keep track of special events and appointments on their phones. How do you keep track of your calendar? John Vessels.
Well, I use my phone mostly. I do all my work appointments are on my Outlook in my emails. So every morning I check my appointments. I do have to see what meetings I have to call into, things like that, or run. But my home life, everything is on my phone. Any appointments that I have to do, like my doctor's appointment coming up or anything, but mostly those. My family's birthdays, I said my sisters, are mostly sisters, but family's birthdays and everything, I keep on my phone to help remind me. Actually, it's really funny because Marsha, my mother's birthday is the 12th. So, and when you said happy birthday today, that's like my mother's birthday is also on the 14th. And it's kind of really buzzworthy because the doctor didn't remember when her birthday was. And so he put on the birth certificate January 12th, and her her mother told her it was January 14th. So for years, she always celebrated on the 14th because that was what her mother told her. So for years, I'd call her twice in January, on the 12th and on the 14th, to say happy birthday. And on the 12th, she goes, it's the 14th. It's like, oh, okay. So I call her back. Back to you, Karen.
One of my favorite memories is eating fudge at my grandmother's house at Christmas time. What is one of your favorite memories, Kim Crandall? Kim, you're muted.
Thank you for that question. Favorite memories. There's different times that I can remember things that were definitely fun and I enjoyed them. Trips that I have taken, times with my family, and also those times when I've had a chance to reflect, as Marcia so poignantly remind us. It's important to do that. I guess probably when I think back on my childhood, it seems like what I remember is like snapshots, bits and pieces, remembering certain holiday or certain important day. But I would like to comment on a couple of things as far as what's important to remember as far as memory. The brain is a wonderful organ and there's a lot we don't know. But when it comes to memory, we know that the brain needs sleep. One of the restorative properties is that that memory goes from short term to long term. And also that obviously there can be a genetic factor. One of the things that I've learned from a genealogy genetic site was that you can be tested and find out your genetic history as far as where your ancestors came from. And they did various tests. And one of the things that they did was an Alzheimer's test. So I do not have that marker, thank goodness. So memories, sometimes somebody mentioned talking about music. Sometimes people can remember where they were at a certain time or a certain song that brought back memories. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Some people learn a foreign language or a new skill to exercise their memory. What do you do to exercise your memory skills, Dagan?
All right. So to exercise my memory skills, well, it's a lot of things I do is kind of repetitive. So, I don't really have to remember things because I'm just so used to doing it, and it just comes second nature. Things at my job, the way I do it, it's just so repetitive. But it's a lot of exercise. So, I guess to get my brain function going, exercising, helps the brain function out, like Rob kind of said before. But really, I really don't do much. I mean, I do some research, for my YouTube channel. I have, there's certain things I got to do research for. So that kind of gets my brain thinking about different things and different ways of doing something, different ways of learning things like that. So I guess in that situation, I do kind of stimulate my brain some, but really for most day in, day out it's mostly just repetitive work that I do. So other than researching and stuff like that from our YouTube channels, things like that, that's pretty much all the stimulation I get. I'm really kind of sad to say that, but so I probably need to, get out there and do some more stimulation for my brain. And like Kim said, I did that genetic research thing too, and I don't have that Alzheimer's marker too, so at least I don't have to worry about that. So, but anyway, yeah, my life is just repetitive. That's all I was to tell you. Back to you, Table Topic Master.
So at this time, Mr. Timer, did all of our participants qualify based on time?
Yes, everybody qualified on time, and I know I didn't say the word day. That's just hard word of day put in.
Okay. And John Vessels, how about the word of the day?
Well, the only person that used the word of the day was Mark Schroeder. And I thought about putting it in there, but I can't even remember if I put it in there. My memory went. So it's just Schroeder.
No, you said it, John.
Oh, I did? Okay.
So
Thank you.
for vote, go ahead and go into the chat and vote for either John Vessels or Mark Schroeder for best table topic, please. And back to you, Mr. Toastmasters.
And of course, send those votes to Dagan Newland.
Thank you very much, Karen. Before I send this over to our general evaluator for the evening, I do want to leave at least my input as Toastmaster and the theme on a more positive note. I went through the foods that you probably got to either get rid of or reduce, but I do want to talk about foods that can help prevent memory loss. And some of these foods were already just mentioned, but first thing is leafy greens, which include kale, collard greens, spinach. These contain B vitamins, and these may reduce depression and boost cognition. Berries, such as raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, and cherries. These contain flavonoid, which is actually specifically anthocyanin. These are antioxidants and vitamins to help reduce the progression of the brain damage and reduce inflammation. Nuts, pecans, almonds, walnuts, cashews, peanuts. These contain healthy fats, magnesium, vitamin E, B vitamins. These all promote good cognition and they ward off signs of dementia. Something that probably a lot of us think and know, omega-3s, olive oil, flax seeds, fatty fish, such as tuna, salmon, mackerel, not those other two that I mentioned before. These contain omega-3 fatty acids, which are effective in fighting and preventing dementia. Another one is cruciferous vegetables. Well, what are cruciferous vegetables, right? Well, those are broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. These contain, again, B vitamins, carotenoids that help homocysteine, which is linked to cognitive decline, to brain atrophy and dementia. So when you increase those, that helps with those things. Another thing, spices. Certain spices help. Sage, cumin, cinnamon. These contain polyphenols, and these aid in the brain health and memory. Also the ability to eat away at brain plaque, reduce inflammation, and prevent Alzheimer's. Some seeds, sunflower seeds, again, flax seeds, pumpkin seeds. These contain antioxidants, vitamin E, zinc, omega-3s, choline. These all reduce cognitive decline. So it's great for that. And that's pretty much it as far as the foods that I want to mention. There are other ones out there, superfoods and such. But at this point, let's go ahead and move to the third portion of our meeting, which is the evaluation portion. And I'm going to hand this over to our general evaluator. Please help me to welcome Mr. Mark Schroeder.
Thank you, Rob. My job tonight as general evaluator is multivariate. I'm going to be doing an evaluation of the meeting as a whole, of course. That's one of the things that I will do. I'm also going to call on, there are two speech evaluators for our two wonderful speeches tonight, and get some duty holders reports on how we did in general on our duties across the board. With that, we're going to start with our first evaluator tonight. The gentleman who will be evaluating Marsha Collins' speech is Mark Sims. Mark, please begin.
Thank you. What makes birthdays so happy? And our birthday date jumps out at us, whether it's the right year or not. Like mine's March 14th. If I see March 14th on some form or whatever, that's what I think about. So a very universal topic. First of all, Marcia, I'll talk about the areas where you excelled. One was disclosure, very good disclosure. You were 48 years old, so no dumb games on trying to conceal the age. It's just a number. So that's straightforward. And then on a sadder note, near the end, you disclosed that you had lost your uncle fairly recently. So very good personal disclosure. Very good on specifics. You didn't just go to lunch with your mom on your birthday, but you went to Century City in Los Angeles. I think that was Clifton Cafeteria. So I've never been to a Clifton cafeteria, but I can almost envision it, that you really helped put us there with you by those specifics. Another specific is that you told the exact amount of money that you saved your husband on dinner because of getting the birthday freebie. What I also liked is that the answer to your question, what makes birthdays so happy, is that you listed them clearly during the discussion. Time with loved ones, freebies, and time for reflection, and that final one, time for reflection, led very well to a more somber and serious, and I think very appropriate end to your speech, where you also noted that that one benefit of a happy birthday was the fact to continue to live, spend time on earth. A couple of things to work on. One, it did feel like the speech was a little short. Even I wasn't looking for the timer, but it just felt a little short. And keep in mind that a birthday discussion is fertile ground for more stories. I bet there was a lot more birthday stories that could come to mind. So I think the next time you try and give this, you definitely would have more material. And then also, I think you're on the coaching path in this, and I'm not sure how coaching really came into play. One way to challenge yourself is, again, on the stories, like, for example, Clifton Cafeteria. I don't know what their appeal was, but maybe it was desserts. Some cafeterias have great desserts, so you could talk about, like, the chocolate cream pie that was so large you could hardly finish it. So that would be an excellent way to take a very good speech, add additional detail, and just give us more to enjoy. Mr. General Evaluator. You're on mute, Mark.
My bad. I put myself on mute because I was, afraid something was going to make noise here. My bad. Thank you, Mark. Really enjoyed your evaluation and all of the specifics in it. Our next evaluator for the evening is going to be evaluating the speech given by Lee King. Lee's evaluator is Rob Giles. Please go ahead and begin your evaluation, Rob.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and especially you, Lee. Tonight, you spoke of your path that you've just completed. You reflected upon it. You gave us some good information. And I want to talk to you about some of the things that you did really well, and something that I think that you might want to think about taking a little bit more time and a little bit more purpose that might enhance your speeches. And then finally tell you something that I really, really enjoyed about the speech tonight. So the first thing that I want to mention is you had great organization. You came off and started with your choice of path, and you talked about that, how you were thinking about this one path and then you chose this other path. And I thought that that was a great way to start the speech. It's a great way to start to dive into that. And then you followed that up with great content, in which case you talked about what you gained and some of the different ways that you gained some of the benefits from going through your path. And then finally, you closed it and you actually gave the audience a challenge. You comprised it and you said, this is something that we can all think about. So I thought your organization was very good. I thought also that you had good content. some of the things that you talked about was learning to work virtually, which was very applicable, not just for yourself, but for everybody, that we've gone through this whole pandemic, 2020, moving now into 2021. It's something where we can learn, and it really actually reflects upon our memories too, as well. It's something that is definitely buzzworthy. Virtual and online are becoming much more common for all of us. You talked about how you learned and grew also through conference calls, and that both of these things, virtual Zoom meetings and conference calls, were something that you weren't all that keen on or all that great with, and that these are things that helped and you grew with this path. Something that I think that you possibly can think about and try maybe a little harder to incorporate was actually some of the things that you talked about, which was things that were difficult during virtual meetings, which was using some sort of gestures and posture that can enhance your speech. And I would reflect and say, you could have actually used it in this speech and been actually specific that I wasn't using any hand gestures, and maybe used it. I was going to take this path, and then I decided to take this path. Things of those nature that you could have incorporated in this specific speech. And kind of on a 1A to something that you might want to think about is trying to change your vocal variety a little bit. That could help. It helps a lot when you're trying to just get your point across. Again, overall, I thought the best thing was that you told us about things that you learned and how you grew, and you challenged us to go ahead and try to do those same things, especially with this new year coming up. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Rob. All right. We've now had 2 speakers and 2 evaluators. My next duty with regard to those is to call for a question of how did they do on time. Timer,
Yes.
Dagan, how did they do?
Both speakers qualified on time.
Wonderful. All right, both speakers have qualified on time. That means we get to vote on them for Best Evaluator. Your vote counter, of course, is also Dagan Newland. Please cast your votes for either Mark Sims or Rob Giles, sending that to Dagan Newland as Best Evaluator for this evening. I'll give everybody just a moment to do that. All right, while everyone is finishing up, I'll mention something from memory that was taught to me well, it couldn't have been last year because I haven't done any traveling. It was actually taught to me on a beach in Jamaica. I was on a beach in Jamaica, needed to remember something, and knew that I was going to have a problem because it was only verbal. And I have a really bad verbal memory, audio memory. But the person taught me the following trick. What she did was she had me, you can think of it as it was almost a website. It was certainly a company. I don't remember if it was actually the URL, but it was the name of a company that I would have been able to find on the web if I had gone looking for them by their name. And what she told me to do was she told me to say the name of the company. So that's one. To write the name of the company on the sand so that I would see it. Plus, the fact that I'm writing it, I have the motion involved in it at the same time. So in effect, I'm locking it in with all 3 of my senses at the same time: audio, video, and kinetic. And I will tell you that something that I would have probably usually forgotten by the time I got back to my beach chair, I remembered for about 4 or 5 days. And that was really impressive. So if there's any way that you can use the same sort of trick to lock it in with multiple senses, that is really, really good for improving the longevity of what could otherwise be a very short temporal and unbuzzworthy memory. All right, so my job now is going to be to give an evaluation of the meeting as a whole. And I'm going to do it mostly chronologically, just because that's the order that I've got it on my screen here. We started mostly on time. I say mostly, we knew that we had a couple of people coming in and wanted to make sure everybody got into our meeting and got themselves settled, were able to hear. I think we were within about 3 minutes maybe, so that's not too bad. We've got a really good crowd tonight. We've got 13 people, of which we have one new member. We voted Karen Smith in last time. Congratulations, Karen. We have 3 guests this evening. We have Paul coming back. We have Cheryl Slagle, who is coming into our meeting tonight, and Baloo Thomas, who is back. She's a previous member coming back to visit us. So thanks to all 3 of you for being here. Let's see, let's talk a little bit about Rob as our Toastmaster. Let's just say he was fine until he used the word donuts. At the word donuts, I felt like cutting him off, but I'm sure that I really don't understand why it is that all of the things that taste good are bad for us. If they were really bad for us, we would have died off long ago, it seems like, but whatever. I thought you had a really incredibly large amount of information that you gave us, and that is good. The one thing I would do is I would compare and contrast the negatives against the positives that you had for us. The negatives, you told us what they were, but you didn't necessarily tell us which part of physiology they tore down, and so why they were bad, as opposed to what you did with regard to all of the things that were positives and pluses, because you said exactly why, what they contained, what they promoted. You listed all of the, the nutrients, et cetera, that were in them. And I didn't get the same feeling. Let's put it this way. I certainly didn't get the feeling that I knew the difference as to why donuts were worse than French fries, or what, exactly what each one of those destroyed. You did mention the diet sodas and fake sweeteners. So you did at least do that. I will admit that one. Let me move to Marcia. Marcia, the one thing that was particularly interesting about your speech, there was one line from your speech that the words themselves are unexceptional, but for some reason, they just caught me. And interestingly enough, they caught your evaluator as well. And it was the line, "Have lunch at Clifton's Bar." Like any of us here have any earthly idea what Clifton's Bar is, because we don't, but that line caught me. And it also, again, caught our evaluator, because you could have just said, "We had lunch," but you didn't. And for some reason, I don't know why that matters. One of my favorite artists, Aaron Lewis, has a song, and it also has a very similar line in it, and maybe why, and it catches me too. The line is, "Of the tractors and the cars all coming home from Liston's Bar." And I have no earthly idea where Liston's Bar is in Massachusetts or wherever he's from, but that line hits me because there's the name in it. It's very effective. It's a very effective image that you have, because it does give you something that you can picture, even if you're picturing it wrong. Let's talk a little bit about Karen. So Karen, for table topics, I thought you had very good questions. There were questions that pretty much everybody could answer. No problems there. I might remark that for Zoom, it's one of the times when the previous questioner gets finished, there's this gap between when the previous person finishes and you pick up. What would seem very normal in an in-person environment, because you don't come up on the screen immediately until you say something, it leaves the previous speaker up on the screen a longer period of time. I don't know whether the right thing to do is just to make enough noise to be able to change speaker view so that you're up immediately or not, and then actually start. But it caught me that the gaps leave the other speaker up longer than I would expect, and it didn't come back to your face when I expected. I don't know. We'll have to work on that as to whether or not, we can talk about that later as to whether or not somebody else noticed that or has ever noticed that during these meetings. But I noticed it tonight. Also, you called on Paul first. He is one of our guests. He's experienced enough. He's been to a few Toastmasters clubs and seen how this works. I don't know that I would have called on him first if it had been me. I think I still might have let him see one or two before you called on him. But he certainly did fine with the question, and you gave him a question that he could answer without a doubt. The word buzzworthy, a miracle happened tonight. I actually used the word of the day. That doesn't seem to happen. I do not remember, honestly, the last year that I used the word of the day during table topics. It just seems like it's been forever. Thank you for holding it up. That did help. having it visible on my screen. Some comments for our evaluators. Mark Sims. Love the way you picked out specifics of the things that you saw during the speech that was given. The specifics, calling attention to exactly what you liked and what you didn't like. I thought, it's really good. I don't understand. You and I may have to talk about why you picked out the same line about Clifton's Bar as I did. Maybe it just is universally that's outstanding. I'm not sure. I liked your comment about having her do more stories, perhaps, in order to enhance it, and including a few more details, because I do think the details do enhance the richness of the stories and the speech. Overall, very uplifting evaluation, and I thought it was completely on point. Rob, liked your comments about her getting off to about Lee getting off to a good start, not her, but Lee getting off to a good start. The fact that there was an audience challenge, noting that, I thought was significant. I liked your comments overall on the content that was used in the speech and its effectiveness. And I have to agree, gestures and vocal variety is an issue, in particular when a camera is too close. And I'm not sure how to easily, certain differences in cameras can change that. It's probably not as easy to change software to get that camera farther away as if it's not zoomed in when it's stuck to a laptop or something, but those kind of things might have helped. Overall, I thought we had a very good meeting tonight. We've had very few ahs and ums, as far as I can tell. But we are going to call on our duty holders reports to see what else was noticed. So let me go ahead and do that. We will start by calling our posture monitor, and our posture monitor, unlike what is in the agenda, is going to be Mark Sims. Mark, how did we do on posture?
Thank you. And I noted some very good nonverbal gestures. Marcia, at one point early in your speech where you made a reference to flowers, you very enthusiastically raised your hands to emphasize. Mark Schroeder, a couple of times when you were enumerating points, you do this thing like you counted off 4 points on the hand in one of your, I believe, your table topics response. And then later on near the end, audio, video, kinetic. So that was helpful. And I think the actual prize for gestures tonight goes to Rob. There are quite a few very good examples. But for example, you talked about someone taking on Toastmasters. You raised your arms to emphasize that. You flexed your muscles to show someone flexing muscles. And then near the end, when you were summarizing the different types of foods that were healthy, it was your facial reactions where you were articulating the words very well. Some of those I might have struggled with the pronunciation. And then also it was just something about maybe the seriousness or the intensity really added to your delivery. So very good facial and hand gestures. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Mark. We have two more duties tonight to discuss, and that's going to be the ah counter and the grammarian. Both of those are being performed by John Vessels. John, tell us about those in whichever order you prefer.
Hey, what if I blend them together? Okay, let's start with the ah counters. And that is, Dagan, you had quite a few uhs. Rob, you had a couple of uhs. Karen, a couple of uhs during table topic toasting. Paul, you had about 3 during your table topics. Then, so Rob used it about 3 times. I mean, there's nothing wrong with ASO, but what we get stuck in is that we use the same conjunction to go all our sentences together. And so you got a little carried away there. And yeah, you kind of got carried away. But just a couple of kind ofs too. I know that's another one of your little crutches. Dagan, you had about 3 you knows. You know that's your big crutch phrase. So work on those. All in all, though, the rest of you did a great job. I do have some grammarian stuff. We had plenty of new words tonight if you hadn't heard them before from Rob, polyphenols, cruciferous, cortisol, and all that kind of stuff. That kind of, plenty of big words tonight, interesting words. I did want to make one point, Mark. Sweeteners are not fake, they're artificial or real. They're still
Good point.
but a donut on occasion hadn't hurt anybody. So occasionally, once a day, once a week, once a month, hey, and it all boils down to the grease. They get cuts and start clogging your arteries is the big thing, and that's what happens with your brain. So one thing I do know about hearing a lot of Alzheimer's patients in my life, you won't remember yesterday, but you will remember what you did 30 years ago. Back to you, Mr. GE.
Thank you so much, John. Yeah, let me mention, in fact, that's actually one of the points of the Balanced Life Challenge. It's not about being perfect. Clearly, dessert was not on the list of things that you're supposed to do every day. But the point of the Balanced Life Challenge is not to get to the end of the 6 weeks and never feel like you want a dessert again. That's just not what the goal is. The goal is to realize that doing a dessert is a -1. We get into a life where if you're not careful, you just continue to do things without thinking about it. You walk into the kitchen, you get a dessert. You walk into the kitchen, you get some chips. You walk into the kitchen, whatever it is. And if you think about it, then maybe you don't do it quite so often. I still do desserts. I still do a lot of the things that I'm not supposed to do, but I can tell you how long it's been since the last time I did it and how many of them I've done this week. And that's very, very different than when it's just done as an automatic response without even thinking about it. Let's see, at this point I get to call for a vote for the best of the big 3. Best of the big 3 are going to be for your Toastmaster this evening, Rob Giles. For your Table Topics Master, that's going to be Karen Lee. Or for General Evaluator, Mark Schroeder, myself. Go ahead and cast your votes. Pass those into Dagan as before. Also, during the Balanced Life Challenge, one of the weeks is to do something to train your brain. I usually pick, there's an app on Android and iOS called Lumosity, Lumosity. It is a pay app, but it supposedly, they claim it is based on brain science. They have a lot of games in there that build combination of memory and dexterity and a little bit of everything to improve your brain. I find that I like them. Whether or not it's worth the cost is up to you, and it's about like a lot of other apps. But I do think they've got a lot of interesting games in there that are quite challenging and worth it. All right. That concludes my duties tonight as General Evaluator. Rob, do you have anything to finish up as Toastmaster, or should we go directly to the business meeting?
Head to the business meeting, please.
All right. We will go straight to our business meeting then. Mark, please start the business meeting. This concludes the rest of our normal business, non-business proceedings.
Thank you. First of all, I want to note our returning guest and prior member, and Paul and Cheryl Slagle. Last week we heard a little bit about you, what brought you to visit the meeting, and this time I'll start with you, Paul. Just any additional observations or feedback you want to share with us?
Yeah, it was nice to participate. I think I got a better idea of what it's like to actually be a part of the meeting. So that was definitely a good first start. I don't really have anything new to add. I mean, I still think it's a great learning experience. I think all of you guys are very friendly and welcoming really like all the feedback that has been given. It's helpful just to be a third party, even if I'm not the one being evaluated. So look forward to continuing to join these sessions.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back. And Cheryl, anything else you want to add?
I would like to thank Mark Schroeder for talking to me for over an hour the other day and filling me in on every single thing that I wanted to know. And I feel like I'm on the right track here. And I feel like this is a great club for me to expand. So I'm excited and I'm ready to join. Thank you for having me.
That's terrific. Now, hopefully he told you the truth on all that. So,
I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know.
That was the brochure. You know that line, right? That was the glossy brochure.
He said something nice about me. That was the truth. And anything else, we'll see. No, we definitely want to have you folks as members. You're totally welcome. Glad you're visiting us. And we're definitely always needing additional members because it's just part of club growth, and it helps us. Hopefully it will help you, but it helps us getting new experiences, new stories in. So please do come back. And Blue, I recall you signed on the Halloween event we had where we were seeing the old clips of haunted houses. But how have you been doing the last few months?
Okay, so I'm trying to unmute myself. But yes, I hadn't had a chance to join the meetings since what was it, October, when the Halloween meeting was conducted. So I thought this was a really great meeting, and I haven't been to Toastmasters in a while, and just hearing all the feedback, it makes me think about what I'm saying and how I'm speaking. And I caught myself doing the there a minute ago and said, okay, what do I do to not say that? But I think this the format being Zoom is excellent because so much has switched over to Zoom. And then the theme I thought was wonderful, and it was great to hear all the discussion about just new ideas and new ways of new habits for the new year. So really great meeting.
Thank you, Blue. Please do come back. And as always, feel welcome to rejoin because we definitely want to continue on the growth mode. And I want to remind everyone, if you've not had an opportunity, especially the club officers, to participate in TLI, Toastmasters Leadership Institute, to please do that in order to continue to learn your roles and help us to get Distinguished Club Program credit. And at this point, I want to see if there is any other business that we want to bring up. Rob.
Yeah, you know that I always. So 2 things. One, the TLI, as you mentioned, it's for all members, specifically for officers, but any actual member of the club, paid member, is welcome to go ahead and participate in any of the TLI. If you go to d50tm.org, that's D as in district, 50 TM as in Toastmaster.org. That will have a place for TLI where it tells you a little bit more about, and you can sign up and you can actually register for particular classes, whether you need to as an officer or whether you're just interested in finding out about some of this stuff. As far as I see a message saying, what is TLI? Yeah, there you go. I'm guessing that's Mark Schroeder showing that.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
so it
usurped
actually
you.
has the stuff listed for Saturday, as well as if you scroll down, there's going to be more there for a little bit later in the week. And some of those are actually other kind of interesting courses that you can take or classes that you can take online. This is all Zoom. And again, if you're a paid member, our club is already paid for you. So you can go at that point. For officers, you are required to do your mandatory 2 hours. And there are only specific courses and classes that can actually fulfill those 2 hours. And then I do also want to mention beyond that is that, again, every Saturday morning, 10 a.m., I do offer a membership orientation, and that goes over a lot of things. It's more appropriate for new members, but any member is welcome to attend. And if current members who have been around for a while want to attend and kind of help me hone some of what I'm saying and what I'm teaching, then that's great. I do see a message in the chat says, what is TLI? TLI is Toastmasters Leadership Institute. And it's a way for you to learn about your roles as officers and about Toastmasters in general, pathways, and some other things as well. And the member orientation is at 10 a.m. And if you go to our DallasSocialToastmasters.com website, we have a calendar there, which is going to have links, but I will send out an email this evening to all of our members that will have that link and information. So that's all that I have to say, although that was quite a bit. Back to you, Mr.
If you don't mind, I'll go ahead and show that too.
Okay, there you go.
So from our site, you would go to the members section and go to the calendar. And you'll find the links right in here for, let's see, the next one will obviously be on the 16th. And so there is the information and the Zoom meeting info. All right.
Does anyone else have any business to bring up? Okay. Hearing none, what we can do is turn to Dagan and find out who our winners are.
All right, so best speaker is obviously Lee King, since we didn't have to vote for him. And the best table topic speaker is Mark Schroeder. And the best evaluator is going to be Rob Giles. And the best of the big three is going to be Mark Schroeder.
Okay, thank you, Dagan. Congratulations to the winners in our competition. I hope that everyone has a great weekend. Take care.
All right, we will stop the meeting in 3, 2,